Okay, how do we pronounce his name? How do we pronounce his name? Okay, so this is the first issue. Okay, Americans, we want to call it Habakkuk, but specifically it's Patricia's got it. Habakkuk. So normally Americans call it Habakkuk, but the name is actually Habakkuk. Probably Hebrew, probably. It's probably a Hebrew name. Habakkuk. Okay. Okay, so how many people read it already? It's hard, right? Do you understand it when you read it? Huh? Yeah. I know what you mean. Those of you who want to move on to Revelation next, are you sure? Habakkuk, most of everything in Habakkuk has already happened, and it's still difficult, right? It's still difficult. Revelation hasn't even happened yet, right? Well, not everything. Well, we're not going to get in a premillennialist, amillennialist debate, but so it's only 3 chapters long, right? You can read it in one sitting pretty easily. We're going to cover the whole book today. Reading the Old Testament is difficult for us. Why is that? Why is it difficult for us to read the Old Testament? It's different time, which means what? Different. Yes, different context. Why? But why is it a different context? Huh? Culture is different, right? They're farmers, right? They're farmers, so you have a lot of farming analogy. Oh, you're like wheat. Oh, you'll be this. You'll be the, I don't know, like a lot of, well, we're going to go through them. A lot of analogies with things that when they tell you, the people hearing will say, I got it. A lot of fishing analogies. And then for us, if you're not a fisherman, if you're not a farmer, you have to learn, okay, what did the farmers have to do? Oh, okay. That you have to learn the process before you get the analogy, right? It's also a translation. Translation from Hebrew into, in our case, English, directly through the Masoretic text. They write differently. So in the West, where's the point? The point of everything. If you write an essay, where's the point? At the beginning, maybe the first sentence, right? So it says, this is my point. Let me explain. Where is, if you have a conversation with someone from the East, where's the point? At the end, right? You talk about everything, have a nice picture of what you're talking about, and at the very end, make your point, right? It's completely different. The Hebrew people did that as well. Where do the Hebrew people make their point? Not the end, not the beginning, in the middle normally, right? In the middle. And that's going to be important today. Okay. So, what kind of prophet was Habakkuk? What kind of prophet was he? Starts with an M. Minor prophet. Minor prophet, which means he was 7 years old. Now, what does a minor prophet mean?
He's not important.
Not important. Very few chapters. It was written in a certain period. Very few chapters, right? How many minor prophets were there? Hey, Johan. Hey, Johan. Oh, thank you. Or I wonder who the other coffee is for. They're both for him. He's really want to listen to my lesson today. How many minor prophets were there? 12, that's right, 12. Just like 12 tribes of Israel, right? The name minor prophets actually comes from Augustine. Augustine named minor prophets. And they're much smaller when you compare them to something like when you compare the minor prophets to something like Isaiah, which is written around the same, and Daniel, which is written around the same time, but the work is much larger. And these are only a few chapters, okay?
Wow.
What is this? Who knows what this is? This is Washington Manuscript 5. Washington Manuscript number 5. So these are right here what you're seeing is the oldest complete scroll of the minor prophets. This is the oldest complete scroll of the minor prophets, around the 3rd century that we have. And some of you are saying, I don't know how complete that is. When you're talking about something that's 2,000 years old, this is called complete, okay? This is called complete. Now, there are, the Dead Sea Scrolls does have manuscripts of the minor prophets that is older, but they're not complete. So the Dead Sea Scrolls, pretty much everything looks worse than this. So this has been recovered to the minor prophets. Okay, all the 12 minor prophets are contained on one scroll. So one scroll, just like Genesis or Exodus, one scroll contains all 12 of the minor prophets. Why do you think that is? What do you think? Now, there's a debate. John Calvin thought they were all recorded on one scroll because they might get lost. So Obadiah is only 21 verses long. So you stick that somewhere and the wind's gonna come and blow it away. So John Calvin said they're all basically recorded on one scroll so that they're easier to maintain. Other people think that maybe they were all recorded by one prophet. We don't really know. Did anyone have, what do you think, Judy?
I've heard someone say like the 12 minor prophets were put in one book because they should be looked at as one book.
Maybe.
Yeah, like maybe similar theme, right? Israel's rebellion, and
Yeah.
and then like when they were put together, like normally between books there were 4 lines, 4 lines between the previous book and the next book, but between the minor prophets there's only 3 lines in between. So when you give only 3 lines between each minor prophets,
Okay.
it makes it like a compilation of the one book.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay. And regardless of the reason why it's all in one scroll, we can all agree that it's recorded by the Holy Spirit. So God does produce this, and therefore it is useful. Anyway, Jonah is another minor prophet, but that's 4 chapters long, so we didn't really go through a long introduction because we spent the whole hour talking about him. Okay, so this is Israel and this is Judah. This is Israel and this is Judah. Okay, this is around the time. Actually, during the time of Habakkuk, Israel has already been conquered by the Assyrians, which makes you look at Jonah in a different light, doesn't it? God had Jonah go to Nineveh, and knowing that soon the Assyrians would conquer Israel, which puts that into a different perspective. So right now, during the time of Habakkuk, only the kingdom of Judah is still surviving, and Habakkuk is a prophet of Judah. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the text. The first verse is the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. Okay, the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. Okay, how about Johan? Do you mind reading verse 2? Or do you mind reading the page?
O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted.
Okay, so this violence, who's doing the violence? Is it people in Judah or people outside of Judah? Who do you think? Inside.
It's a little bit of both, but it's mostly inside.
It's inside. Inside Judah, Habakkuk is seeing violence. That's just the cry out, violence. He's just seeing violence. The Lord doesn't seem to hear, doesn't seem to save. The Lord makes Habakkuk see iniquity. The Lord sees the wrong. He does nothing. Habakkuk sees destruction and violence, strife and contention. The law is paralyzed. Justice never happens. The wicked surrounds the righteous. Justice goes forth perverted. And this is all things that are happening inside of Judah. And this is what Habakkuk is witnessing. And we know that because the next, when the Lord answers Habakkuk, he's going to reveal that he's going to judge Judah, just like he judged Israel. Okay, how about Patricia? Do you mind reading this page?
Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days, as you were not made in code. I'm rising up the
Chaldeans.
the Chaldeans and return an nation who march through the breadth of the earth. It says Judeans, now they are all.
Okay, so the Chaldeans here, you can call them Chaldeans or you can call them Babylonians. They're basically Babylonians. Babylonian history is extremely complicated, conquering each other and conquering people and changing areas of land. The Chaldeans, Babylonian has a long history. This is the Chaldean era of the Babylonians. By the way, this is the Lord's answer to Habakkuk. So what is the Lord saying? What is the Lord saying?
The Lord is saying that I will raise up this enemy to kind of like punish or discipline the Jewish people.
Right. Because of the things we saw in verses 2 through 4, God will be raising up a foreign enemy to destroy Judah. So, what is the heart of Habakkuk's problem? What is the heart of it? Not violence, but what is the heart of his problem that brought it up to begin with? That he prayed to God to begin with.
But there's no justice.
There's no justice.
People go unpunished.
Is God what? Is God righteous? Is God just? How can you be just? Look what's happening in Israel. That's what he is. That's what, and we see a lot of Psalms that are just like that. You know, we see a lot of Psalms where David is saying, "How long will you stand idly by and let the wicked be evil and the righteous be afflicted?" This is the same thing. Habakkuk is saying, "Are you not just? Look what is happening." And so God's answer is, yes, I am just. What? They're going to be punished, right?
Teacher Thomas.
Yes?
What do you think about? I find this very interesting. Like, if I were God, I like to play God. I would maybe send a fire, earthquake, or fall, a natural disaster to discipline my
Okay. Hey, Wei, come have a seat. Sophia, you are having Habakkuk's response. Just wait, because you are having Habakkuk's response. Just wait, because Habakkuk is going to ask a similar question to God. So, they are bitter. The Chaldeans, they're bitty, they're hasty. They march through seizing dwellings, not their own. Okay, how about Judy? Do you mind reading the next page? Mez, do you mind reading the next page?
They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horsemen are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift and fast.
Okay, so they are dreaded and fearsome. Where does their justice come from? From the law? No, where does it come? Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. I was really convicted when I read that when I was studying for this, because I feel like Americans, their justice and dignity, they comes from themselves, not from God's law, not from God's word, not anymore. They have swift horses, swifter than leopards, more fierce than wolves. Horsemen press proudly on, coming from afar, fly like eagles, swift to devour. Very violent people.
So that means they were be conquered also by the other nations, the Babylonian.
The what?
The Babylonian will be conquered by also by the other.
No, this is this.
They come from.
That's later on. That's later on. But right now, this is just how scary the Babylonians are. So the Babylonians are very wicked people,
They were kind of noticed.
and so Israel is losing their protection, because in order for Israel to be protected by God, they have to basically keep the law, and that doesn't not in a legalistic way, but they have to use the law and by faith love the law and try to mirror the law through faith, because they're trying to be God's glory on earth. But by turning away from the law and perverting justice and all this stuff and being so violent, they're going to lose their protection. They're going to lose their heavenly protection. And so Israel has been this little fish in this ocean of monsters, and God just sort of supernaturally protects them as long as they're in a good relationship with God. But now they're not, and God's going to remove that protection. And God is just showing them how scary, how terrifying these people are, right?
The horsemen come from Babylon, very far place, and then
Okay, how Judy, do you mind reading this page? This is the last one for this.
They all come for violence, on their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own mind is their God.
All right, who's their God? Who's their God?
Their own mind.
Their own might, huh?
I thought you were going to say their actual God.
Well, I'm just their own might is their God. They're guilty men whose own might is their God, and so their God is what this nation can do, what these people can do. Their power, that's their God. It's not like the God of Israel. Okay, and they scoff and laugh at all these the kings and rulers. They're not scared. They're not scared of kings or rulers or fortresses. They pile up earth and take all these fortresses, and then, like the wind, they sweep by. This is just an unstoppable force of judgment. And so, how are the Chaldeans similar to Judah? How are the Chaldeans similar to Judah? They're both violent, right? Yeah. Do they respect the law? No. So Judah's about to get a taste of their own medicine, aren't they? Judah's violent. Judah doesn't respect the law. There's no justice. They surround the righteous. And so what's going to happen? They're going to be conquered by the Chaldeans, who are also violent. Their God is their power. They have no justice. And they're going to be surrounded by people who are even more wicked. And this is just God's way of judging Judah. Give them a taste of their own sin. Okay, so the Babylonians, Chaldeans, they're kind of the same people. This looks like it's after that they conquered Judah, but this is kind of like their enormous kingdom. All right, so this is obviously this is Asia, Middle East area. So
They conquered the whole yellow area.
right, they conquered the whole yellow area. Yeah, so they're big.
Tarshish too.
So Sophia, what is Habakkuk's response?
Let's read.
Okay, it's very similar to yours though. It's very similar to yours. Okay, Wade, do you want to read?
Okay. Are you not from everlasting? Oh no, my God, my Holy One. You should not die, O Lord. You have always arranged unto judgment, and you, O God, have establishment for refuge. Continue?
Yeah, just continue.
You who are of purple eyes that you see evil and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and then remain silent when the wicked swallows up the men more righteous than he?
Okay. So we shall not die. Like it's kind of like just like Sophia a little bit. At the beginning, I think if Habakkuk was going to do the judgment, I think Habakkuk would, like Sophia said, like, give him a nice fire, a big California fire, or kind of let him show him, shake, give him a minor earthquake, just let him realize. Yeah.
Typhoon.
Habakkuk, he's changed his concern, right? At the beginning, his concern was what? Judah is what? Judah is very wicked, right? And now now his concern is what? Don't destroy Judah. Like his first thing was, Lord, everyone is so unrighteous in Judah, and now it's, Lord, don't destroy Judah. So he was the one that initiated the prayer, right? He sees how wicked they are. Hi, Mila. He sees how wicked they are, but he doesn't want them to be judged. Okay, look at this. You have ordained them as a judgment. He sounds a lot like Jonah, right? You have ordained them as a judgment. These are pagans. You've created these people just to judge. Why are you going to conquer? Why are you going to let them conquer us? You have established them for reproof. You've established them just to be the blame. These are bad people. How can a pure God allow the evil Chaldeans to destroy the more righteous Judah? That's his point. Okay, let's keep going.
So are the Chaldeans like created to be removed?
That's his point. That's the Habakkuk's point is.
So the Babylonians were created to.
So he's got the Jonah mindset. The Jonah mindset is we're the good people, they are the bad people. Yes.
I disagree.
Yes, of course.
I think what he's saying is we're the bad people, but they're worse than us. We're bad. Like he sees us like these people are bad. That's why he said, "Oh God, why don't you do something?" Like they're bad, but they're worse. I don't want the bad people to be punished by the worst people.
Okay. That's part of his point.
Look good.
I agree a little bit with that. Let's read Juliet, why don't you read the fisherman analogy? This is a fisherman analogy.
You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up on the boat. He drags them out of his net. He gathers them in his dragnet, so he rejoices.
Okay, let's keep going. That Juliet, do you mind reading, please? Juliet, verse 16.
He sacrificed to his neck and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives immeasurably, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations for him?
Okay, so now we do see we shall not die. We do see Habakkuk, he doesn't want his people to die. His first prayer is, Judah is so unrighteous. Now he's saying, we shall not die. So there is this, and then here, this is the fisherman analogy. Fisherman. Who's the fisherman? Who's the fisherman? Chaldeans is the fisherman. And mankind are the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. So the fisherman draws them out with a hook, drags them out with his net, gathers them in his dragnet, and he rejoices and is glad. That's what the Chaldeans do. They just keep conquering people, and just like a fisherman. Okay, and then what is verse 16? He sacrifices to his net. What is that referring to? Chaldeans, what? What's their religion? It's paganism, right? So he just takes and he takes and he takes, and this is Habakkuk talking. Habakkuk says he sacrifices to his net, makes offerings to his dragnet. So he worships the things that gives him the fish, not God. He's not worshiping God. He's worshiping just the instruments that he uses to take the fish. And that's how he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. And Habakkuk ends by saying, is he then to just keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely once again, Habakkuk is saying what to God? Are you what? Just. Are you just? Are you righteous? Like at the beginning, are you righteous? Look how evil Judah is. And now are you just? You're going to destroy Judah by people even more wicked. Like Sophia was saying. Okay, how about Losa? Do you want to read verse 1? Can you read it?
Chapter 2, verse 1. I will take my stand and my watchpost and stations myself on the palm and look out to see what you will say me and what are the answer relating to my companions.
Okay, thank you. So Habakkuk really thinks this time he's got a lot of confidence that he's right and God is wrong. That's what a lot of his complaining is. He's right and God is wrong. But look at this. At the very end he says, and what I will answer concerning my complaint. That's not very easily understood. I find the New American Standard Bible to be easier to understand with the Old Testament for some reason. ESV for the New Testament, NASB for the Old Testament. So basically what Habakkuk is saying, after saying all these things about the fisherman analogy and all this, after saying all these things, he's going to his tower to see what the Lord will say to him, and he assumes he's going to be rebuked by God. He assumes he's going to be rebuked. And by the way, Habakkuk's questions are always, Lord, are you righteous? Are you righteous? Let me ask you a question. Does God need Habakkuk's advice? No. The Lord does not need help from the prophet Habakkuk to be righteous. God is always righteous, just like Jackie's her last song. God is always righteous. God is always good. He doesn't need our advice. Lord, are you sure you want to do that? God does what is righteous all the time. And so Habakkuk knows God, and he knows he's going to be rebuked at the end, and probably he realizes already that he's going to be wrong, maybe. Okay, so this is the fisherman analogy. This is Babylon. This is the Chaldeans, or the Babylonians.
Can I just read the NASB version? I think it's clearer.
Okay.
So, chapter 2, verse 1 says, I will stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me, and how I may reply when I am rebuked.
So he's going to reply, right?
Yeah.
So he knows he's going to get corrected.
And then he will reply.
But it seems as though Habakkuk's the whole time he's saying, God, are you really righteous? Now it changes. It started off, Judah is very unrighteous. Are you sure? You see all these things. Are you going to do something? And then God says, yeah, I'm going to punish them. Thanks for reminding me. Well, not thanks for reminding me, but yeah, I just want to make sure you see it. Just to make sure you see it too. And then God tells him what he's going to do. And Habakkuk's like, don't do all those things. Are you sure you're righteous? But the Babylonians are so terrible. Right?
It's hard to be a prophet. Like they have, I feel like a lot of the prophets have that kind of mindset. Like sometimes they represent their own people in front of God, and they represent God in front of their own people. So they have two yeah, it's like two lines, like parallel going at the same time, like schizophrenic. It's the middle. It's like a middle thing, like
Yeah. So that, and
Scariest part, you cannot do anything, but you know what will happen to the people.
And so this is the Chaldeans, and they're just catching the nations. This is the Habakkuk's analogy, catching the nations, and he worships his net, his drag net, and Habakkuk, the Babylonians are just having a nice little time. Okay, next, how about Annabelle? Could you read this?
Lord answered me, write a vision, make it plain on tablet, so you may grant the reason, or still the vision awaits its appointed time. Listen to the end, it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come, it will not delay.
Okay, so what is Habakkuk going to wait for? A what? He's going to receive a vision, a revelation, and he wants him to record it. He's going to record it, and then the person who reads the recording will run, likely to tell other people. Okay, they're going to see what Habakkuk's vision is, and hopefully they're going to go run and tell other people, maybe so that they can repent or be ready. Okay. Let's read, let's see here. Jackie, could you read this slide, please?
Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall be by his faith.
Okay, let's talk about that for a little bit. Okay, so like Sophia was saying, are the Chaldeans, are they innocent? No, they're worse. Well, I don't know if they're worse, but they're probably worse, right? They're horrible people. And one cool thing about history is this is getting more and more recent. So the minor prophets, we actually have a lot of writing of these people, and these people are terrible people. Like the pagans who lived at this time, watching documentaries on these people, these pagans, the Persians and the Babylonians, these are unbelievably terrible people, and they have done unspeakable things that if you talk about them, you're going to have nightmares. Just things that kings will do to people, to their own servants, and things like that. Habakkuk keeps asking God, "Are you righteous? Are you righteous? Are you righteous?" And behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. Okay, someone, let's talk about that. It's pretty important, right? Let's talk about that. Who wants to talk about this verse? What does it mean? His soul is puffed up, the righteous shall live by his faith. So,
This is the proud one. The proud one is the Babylonians, right?
It could be. It could be.
The Jewish people can also be puffed up and
Right.
violent at the same time.
So this is chapter 2. The rest of chapter 2, the Lord will be talking about how bad the Chaldeans are. So in the first chapter, Habakkuk is talking about how bad Judah is. Chapter 2, after this, the Lord will talk about how bad the Chaldeans are. And the third chapter will be the Lord is going to judge the Chaldeans. So, and this is, we talked earlier, Israel likes to put their point in the middle. They don't put it in the beginning like Americans. They don't put it at the end like they do in Taiwan. They put it in the middle. And you could argue, although this is one verse, you could argue that this verse, verse 4, is what the whole thing is about. The whole book is about. Because if Judah is unrighteous, what will happen? They will be judged, right? God will judge Judah, even if they're unrighteous. If the Chaldeans are unrighteous, what's going to happen? They will die, right? And this is a lot like Jonah. Jonah was a racist, right? Jonah thought his people were special. And so the Assyrians should just die because they're pagans. Habakkuk is such a parallel. If Judah is unrighteous, they will be judged. If the Chaldeans are unrighteous, they will be judged. And behold, his soul is puffed up. I really don't know who they're talking about here. The assumption is the Babylonians. Obviously, Nebuchadnezzar was very puffed up. He's going to be judged for that, isn't he? But Judah is also puffed up. Jonah was very puffed up. Who are the righteous? Who are the righteous? Who are the righteous? Those who live by faith. Right? And that's probably, even though it's in the middle, even though it's one verse, that's probably the whole point of the whole book. The righteous are not the people, the Judeans who are puffed up. Well, we are God's people from the beginning. We are the circumcised people. And then they can be unrighteous. The righteous are not the Babylonians who have all the might, who have all the power, earthly power. The righteous are those who live by faith.
I like that verse so much because it's not about race at all. It's not about like your nationality. It's just like if it goes by faith. There's no racism there. And when God says, "Oh, the righteous shall live by faith," it doesn't say, the Babylonian or the Jewish people. It's just
Okay.
Can I ask, like,
Yes.
is the verse saying, like, if you are righteous and live by faith, then you will not be killed? And
Yeah,
will live?
you need to. Well, the righteous are not. No, that's a good point, Judy, because in verse 4 there's a contrast. There's a contrast. What's bad? Puffed up, right? And the Jews in New Testament times were puffed up, right? The Pharisees were puffed up. I mean, this is such a relevant verse to, pretty much the whole book of Matthew. God is contrasting the soul that is puffed up with the person who is living by faith. Yes.
Could that perhaps be interpreted also as the Chaldeans and God used them to discipline and attack the Israelites? Maybe those who are righteous, or those whose hearts God knows are not involved in disregarding the law and encouraging violence, that somehow they will be saved, or even if they happen to be killed, their death is going to be avenged somehow, their honor is still intact. I don't know, one way or another. A lot.
Maybe. What you're saying is definitely going to be in chapter 3. What you're saying is definitely going to be in chapter 3. Okay. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Where is this verse in the New Testament? Where is that in the New Testament? Two places. Hebrew is good, Judy's. Okay, so I'll read it in Hebrews. This is Hebrews chapter 10. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay, but my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. So the righteous live by faith. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and persevere their souls. Hebrews chapter 10. And Romans chapter 1. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. And of course, and so what is the relevance of that? Huh? What does this handsome man have to do with that? So, Martin Luther was studying Romans, and he was studying Romans, and he was going through Romans chapter 1, and he was reading chapter 1, the righteous shall live by faith, and then we had the European Reformation. That was it. And that is a quote from Habakkuk. Right? It's a direct quote from Habakkuk. Okay. So the rest of this, now behold, his soul is puffed up. Like I think Sophia said, I think it may be focusing on the Babylonians. I think it's both. And it could be both. And that's why it's so wonderful to contrast the soul that's puffed up versus the one that lives, the righteous one that lives by faith. But I don't know if his soul is the Babylonians, Chaldeans, or if it's both Israel and the Chaldeans. But the rest of this chapter is all focusing on the Chaldeans. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. So this is a lot of things that Habakkuk was saying, right? The fisherman analogy. The Lord is saying, they do exactly that, right? They drink too much. They have too much greed. They take too many people. So next is Sophia. Do you mind reading?
Shall not all these take up their taunts against him, and scoffing at the riddles from him, and say, woe to him who keeps up what is not his own, for how long? And loads himself with the pleasures. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will awake tremble? Then you will be so glad.
Okay, what does woe mean? What is woe?
Trouble.
What? It's bad, right? It's not blessed, right? It's not a blessing, it's a woe. It's bad. Yeah, you're in trouble. When the woe comes, judgment's coming, right? Woe to the Chaldeans. Okay, they heap up what is not their own. The Lord uses his own analogy. They're debtors. So they keep destroying nations. At some point, the nations are all going to rise up against the Chaldeans. Okay, that's the Lord's analogy. Okay, because you have, let's read. How about Joanna? Do you mind reading?
Because you have plundered many nations, all the remnants of the people shall plunder you. For the blood of men and violence in the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. Woe to him who gives evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the use of fire.
Okay, so another woe, right? Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house. So he said, a bird has a nest where? Up high, right? Why does a bird put their nest up high? So they're safe. The Chaldeans are doing the same thing, but are they going to be safe? Probably not. How about Johan? Do you mind reading this page as well?
You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples who have forfeited your life. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the door.
All right, and that's enough. I'll read 12 later. So verses 9 through 11, this is another woe. This one is they're the debtors, and then this woe is they build their homes in a safe place, but because this is divine judgment, this is judgment from God, nowhere that they build their homes will be safe. Okay, so the stone that in their home will cry out from the wall, the beam from the woodwork will respond. Now this is probably all symbolism. What God is basically saying is, you're not going to be safe. They have all these, they're doing all these things so that they can keep their treasure, keep what they've done, and live in their nest, but God's going to, this is divine judgment. So no matter what they do, they're going to be judged. And
Does anybody know, does everyone know what debt means? So debt means if I take money from you, then I am in debt to you, so I should give back. So if I am in debt to you, I should give you back what I take from you before, took from you before. So the Babylonians are taking people and money from every nation, so they will be in debt to all of the nations. They will come back and ask for whatever they took from them. That means
they're not going to ask. They're going to come in with a spear.
whatever it takes, right? And then I just want to say, like, the stone will cry out. It reminds me of I think one of the songs or something. It
Oh.
says, like, if the people don't praise me, the stone will praise me.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's so funny when God likes to use, like, even the stone will cry out, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But they're not going to be safe. Yep.
Basically, there's a lot of like economic injustice going on, right?
Well, there's
Economic injustice.
what injustice? Economic. I think they're conquering people with blood, and we're going to. Well, actually, we're going to see that in chapter 12. Let's read verse 12. Woe to him who builds a town with blood, and founds a city on iniquity. Patricia, could you read this page, please?
Behold, it escapes not from the Lord of hosts, that people labor merely for fire, the nations will bury themselves for nothing, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea.
Okay, so this is talking about what Sophia was talking about. What are they doing? They're building their wealth. They're building their towns with blood. Found city on iniquity. So basically, is it right that people basically labor for fire? Is it right that they work their whole lives to provide for their family and live, and then all they get is their city is on fire? The nations weary themselves for nothing. They get nothing. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. That's what, and he's contrasting with, if this was the new heaven and the new earth, after sin is dealt with, this is what's supposed to be happening. Not this. They're not living out the way that they're supposed to be living, right? Just judging people.
So are they talking about slave labor?
Well,
Concentration camps? Like,
I would say, they're labor merely for fire. I think.
just that they will be burnt, that they will be killed.
Well, who builds a town with blood? So they're building towns with blood. It could be iniquity. It doesn't say what all the iniquity is. I'm assuming there's a lot of conquering. Conquering a city, killing a bunch of people, and then conquering a town, and then sacking it, and so the city is on fire. And so and then here's another woe. Mila, do you mind reading this page, please? Okay, so obviously the Babylonians were very famous for getting drunk. But this is not specifically getting drunk. This is getting drunk. If you drink too much, you lose your inhibitions and you just indulge. You indulge. So yes, the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, yes, they do get drunk. They're famous for getting drunk. But they're indulging all their sins. Not just alcohol, but they're just indulging everything. So, including killing. And so, woe to him who makes neighbors drink. So he's making them and neighbors drink iniquity. He's making them drink wrath. And you pour out your wrath and make them drunk in order to gaze at their nakedness, and you have your fill of the same glory of shame instead of glory. Drink yourself and show your uncircumcision. And basically the cup in the Lord's hand. Remember, this is another analogy. Remember, Jesus had to drink the cup of wrath. But this is the cup in the Lord's right hand will come, and then they will have to drink. And they're going to be drinking the Lord's wrath. Right? Okay. Judy, do you mind reading this page?
The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, as will the destruction of the beasts that terrify them. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities, and all who dwell in them. What father is an idol when its maker has shaped it? A metal image, a teacher of lies, for its maker trusts in his own creation when he makes speechless idols.
Okay. Of course, the Chaldeans were also idolaters. And we are all Christians. We know that idols are worthless, but the owner has to shape it out of a metal image. For the maker trusts in his own creation when he makes speechless idols. How about Mez? Do you mind reading this page?
Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a silent stone, arise. Is this teach? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver.
Okay, and then so here the God is, you contrast God, the Lord, with idols. The God is not some wooden thing. He is alive. The stone cannot teach, although it's overlaid with gold and silver, there's no breath in it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Okay? So the idol and the Lord is completely different. The idol is just a rock or a piece of wood that is made, and maybe it's made very beautifully, but it's just an idol. But the Lord is in his own holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Okay. So that brings us to chapter 3. Very quickly, we'll go through this. This is the vision of, this is talking about the vision. Remember, in the last chapter, the Lord tells Habakkuk he's going to have a vision. So far what has happened, the first prayer, Habakkuk says what? The first prayer, Habakkuk says what? Look how sinful Judah is. And then the Lord's response is, look at the Chaldeans. They're going to come. And then Habakkuk says what? No, we will not die. The Chaldeans are worse. And then the Lord says what?
They will die.
The righteous will live by faith, and yes, they will die. He says, woe to you, all these things, because of all these things. And these are all things that the Lord sees the Chaldeans doing. You do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this. And now this chapter is going to be the vision. This is going to be the vision. And it's interesting, who's the vision against? Well, I guess you don't know, but the vision is going to be against the Babylonians. Remember, he said, Habakkuk said, who sees the vision, let them run. I guess the Babylonians and as well as the Hebrew people are both going to be able to repent from this, and some people think that Nebuchadnezzar actually repented. So let's go through this very quickly. O Lord, I have heard the report of you and your work. O Lord, do I fear? In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. All right, what does that tell you about the vision? I have heard the report of you and your work. He's seen the vision. Oh Lord, do I what? Fear. In wrath, remember what? So this has changed again, right? Sophia was right. She says, the Chaldeans are so much worse. And now he's seen the vision of what's going to become of the Chaldeans. And he says, oh my gosh. What? Yeah, in your wrath, remember mercy. Oh Lord, do I fear? He's seen the vision of God, what God is going to do to the Chaldeans. And now he's seen the absolute wrath. The Lord says he's going to dump his cup out on the Chaldeans, and the vision is horrifying, right? Okay, God came from Teman. Teman is probably what we would call the south. Northeast, southwest in Israel were geographical locations. So Teman is how they would say the south. And the Holy One from Mount Paran, Salah. His splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. So this is Mount Paran. It's in the south. Mount Paran. And then we're seeing what God looked like. Okay, his splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. And the earth was full of his praise. I don't know if this is Israel. I don't know. The earth was full of his praise. Either the judgment is so horrifying that they actually praise God, or maybe this is the future time. What do you think, Judy? The earth was full of his praise.
I think it's the future.
I think it's both, right? He's sort of seeing the future judgment of the Chaldeans, but it's also connecting with the the day of the Lord, the future judgment when God is going to come back to earth and make all things right. Right? His brightness was like the light. Rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed at his heels. What does that remind you of? The pestilence and the plague. What does that remind you of? Egypt, right? He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low, and his were the everlasting ways. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was your anger against the rivers, or your indignation against the sea, when you rode on your horses, on your chariot of salvation? This is a lot of imagery back to what? The Exodus, right? So, and let's see, when does the imagery stop? I think verse 12, so let's keep going.
Can you explain how is it the imagery of Exodus?
Let's just read it first. You strip the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. So the bow is a weapon of war, right? You split the earth with rivers. Splitting the earth, that's kind of like Moses splitting the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their place at the light of your arrows as they sped, at the flash of your glittering spear. A lot of war analogies. God is bigger than the mountains, all these things that we think are eternal, like mountains and rivers. God is bigger than all of this, and we see the bow, the glittering spear. God is really giving him a vision of judgment. You march through the earth in fury. You threshed the nations in anger. Okay? And so this is a lot like Exodus. So how much we're 3 minutes after an hour. This is a lot like Exodus. Okay? It's parting the rivers, the pestilence, the plagues. This is all things that God did to the Pharaoh, right? So this is the vision. Now, the future may not happen exactly like this. The point is, God is the same God who rescued Israel by crushing the Egyptians. And now, in verse 13, we start talking about saving people. Because remember, two things happened during the Exodus. God poured out wrath on the Egyptians, and he also saved his people. And so verse 13, we see that. You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. And this is a little bit what Mez was talking about, being able to tell the righteous from the unrighteous. You pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me, rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret. You trampled the sea with your horses, the surging of mighty waters. Okay, so does everybody see the Exodus analogy? Which one? Are you here?
Yeah, you wanted us to see the Exodus analogy. Yeah.
So you've got parting the rivers, you've got the pestilence and the plagues, just like in Egypt, but also God is also a God of salvation. For those who, his people, he will rescue. So God's going to destroy the Chaldeans, but he's also, Judy, you look tired. The Chaldean, but they're also going to, his people, he's also going to recover, just like in the Exodus. And this is going to happen the day of the Lord. One day God's going to save his people. God's going to judge the world, but he's going to save his own people. Okay, so this is both what's going to happen to the Chaldeans, and it's also going to be what's going to happen in the future when when Jesus returns.
Verse 13 also reminded me of David and Goliath.
Oh, I almost missed it.
Crush the head of the house of the wicked. Goliath, right? Like the head is like gone.
Yeah, maybe. Or it could also be a reference to Genesis chapter 3. Crush the head of the serpent. Oh, that's very interesting. Well, verse 13, I didn't see this earlier. Look.
It's like the war, it's like war scene.
For the salvation of your anointed. Who's the anointed? Who's the anointed? Jesus, right? You went out, David's already dead, right? You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. That's Jesus. Now, Habakkuk does not point to Jesus as much as some of the other minor prophets, but he still points to Jesus, and here it is. And then, in the same verse, you crush the head of the house of the wicked. And that's Satan. This is a pretty clear reference, I think, to Genesis chapter 3. Yeah. The difference between the serpent's offspring and Eve's offspring, right? Okay. Thanks. Great job, Sophia. Well, I'll just edit that out. I'm gonna edit it out, and it's gonna be when the words are not synced, when my lips and the audio is completely different. It's gonna look like I knew exactly what I was doing, though. Okay. Oh no! Put on the mask. And by the way, who will eventually conquer the Chaldeans? Does anybody know from history? Because we're getting later on to history. Not the Romans, not the Greeks, the Persians, specifically King Cyrus the Great. King Cyrus the Great of the Persians will be the ones who actually...
Wasn't he a king that was he the one who looked at, is it Daniel more favorably?
Yes.
Right?
I thought Daniel was Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yeah, but then by the time Cyrus came, I think he was older.
Okay.
He to serve those two. Yeah, right? That's the only thing I know about
Yeah.
Cyrus.
So basically, when Cyrus was ruling, Daniel was sent back to the temple, right? And then also when the Medes came, it was the Video Wall.
Oh, okay.
So it was like Persian Empire and then Medes, which was kind of Turkish.
MEDES.
Medes is actually like the Kurds, sorry, Kurds. Okay. The Persian and the Kurds.
Okay, so let's move right along. We're almost done, about 3 more verses. This is verse 16. This is how Habakkuk felt after he saw the vision. I hear, and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. Okay? It sounds absolutely terrifying. This is not even to Judah. This is the people who invade. You conquer God's people, you're going to get judged a little bit more harshly, right? And so I think this verse for me helps me to have compassion for people because, we're Christians and we might get taken advantage of by the world more often than not. But, the future for them is going to be bleak, eternity. And if we knew, if God gave us a vision of what it's going to be like for them in the future, we would probably be the same, just like Habakkuk. Our body would be trembling, our lips, and we will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who, afflict us. Okay, that was his feelings at the end. And then this is the final 3 verses. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. So what is Habakkuk's feelings at the end? So the first time he says, God, are you righteous? Look at Judah. Then it's, God, are you righteous? Look at the Chaldeans. And now it's what? Yes, God, you are what? You are righteous. Even if the fig tree should not blossom, fruit be on the vines, all these things happen, yet Habakkuk will rejoice in the Lord, take the joy in God of his salvation. Now that he sees the whole picture, God revealed to him the whole picture. Now, yes, the Lord is righteous. God is going to judge the Israelites, and he's going to judge the Chaldeans very severely, and now he can rejoice that God is a righteous God. Okay?